Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have my friend Mia Sims as a guest. And Mia is the owner of Mia, the Event Diva, and she has produced a very wide range of really great events, not just galas, but also weddings and birthday parties, corporate events, and things like that. And it's as we evolve and expand our content of what we talk about on this program, Mia was the perfect person to kind of bring in because she has such a great range of experience in all different types of events, large and small. And she's just the perfect guest to have, and she's a lot of fun to be around. So I'm really excited to have her. Mia, welcome, and I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I am glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I want to know where your passion for producing and participating in fabulous events comes from.
Oh, that's a good question. So my background is creative. So I'm just a creative person by nature. I'm the oldest of five and the only girl. And so I tended to be the boss, even though I wasn't trying to be the boss. Um, I just kind of got put in that position. So organizing just became just part of what I did. I did not plan to be an event planner. That wasn't the plan. I was actually very much into music. I played the clarinet, was in glee choir, and so I actually thought I was going to go down the music route, but I ended up always being skilled administratively. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, I just ended up working, having to work and take care of her, being a single parent. And I really fell into events. I started doing them as part of an executive assistant and found out I love this. As I got into it, I was like, oh, I love it more. And I was more competitive every year. If it was something annually, I was like, how do we do it better? That's when I was like, this is what I want to do.
So tell me then, that, and I knew you had a musical and artistic background, so it was interesting hearing kind of how life basically almost kind of guided you into events, which is really interesting. What
Mhm.
motivated you to say, you know what? I'm going to actually branch out and I'm going to launch Mia the Event Diva on my own and kind of make that because it's one thing to kind of work it, and then it's another thing to kind of own it and be a brand with it.
That's a good question. Um, so when I was doing events, I did them for the Urban League early on, St. Edward's University, then Austin Children's Shelter. When I got to a certain point, I know I wanted to stay in events, but I wanted to do other types of events and more events. And so when my daughter was almost done with college, because money was going to that, of course. Um, I knew that would be the time, but I actually thought about it for a couple of years because I knew doing my own business would not be an easy task. So, but I got to the point where I wanted to do more things and I was limited and I wanted to continue to do events. I didn't want to do anything else. So, when she was almost done with school, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to branch out on my own.
That's fantastic. Now, was there a moment where you were like, when you said, because you talk so passionately about events and it's a thing for you, was there like a moment at an event where you were like, God, I'm doing this for the rest of my life and I just know it right here and right now?
Yes. So when I moved to Austin, I moved here from Portland, Oregon. And when I moved here, I was working for the Urban League. I was working for the Urban League in Portland, and my boss at the time was promoted to the CEO of the Austin Urban League, Herman Lazard, back in the day. And that's how I got to Austin. He said, "Will you come and be my executive assistant?" And I said, okay. I knew no one. And the Equal Opportunity Day banquet, which they still do every year, was part of one of the things. And it was then that I said, this is it. I was in like, I love people, I love details. Um, I loved all of those pieces. And so it was really during that time that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I was there. I saw I like being behind the scenes and pulling all the pieces together. And so to pull all the pieces together and create something really special, I was like, oh, this is it.
So I'm glad you said that and you talked about behind the scenes because, I was having a conversation about somebody with this maybe only a couple of weeks ago. And they were like, what is a great event producer to you? And, I mentioned yourself and several other names. And I said, each of them is an excellent COO. So I love that you were talking about kind of because a good COO is, I don't want to say is behind the scenes, but they're making sure everything's flowing and going well. And the
Hmm.
CEO, which would be like the executive director of the nonprofit, let's say at a gala, they're the CEO of the event. And any good CEO has an amazing COO tied to it. So I really like that you brought that up and really kind of, in that really you described exactly how an event producer is a great COO.
Yeah, I don't like actually being in front of people. I'd rather be behind the scenes. So something like this is even hard for me because I was like, oh, I like behind the scenes, pulling it all together. But I realize this is part of it now. But I love pulling it all together and seeing how it works and like being in the back of the room and seeing like as an event producer, part of it, I just hover a lot. I'm like, okay, what's happening? Let me feel the temperature. And I'm always just kind of looking around and floating because something's gonna go wrong. But it's like, so my job is, or the challenge is to fix it before anyone even knew. And
That
sometimes
I know
sometimes you
exactly
can't,
what you're
but
saying. And
mhm.
and here's the deal. So I get this question a lot, and I know if it was a drinking game on this show, people and are listening to 5 or 6 episodes in a row, they're probably drunk by the sixth episode of this. But I get the question all the time, what does it take to make a perfect event? And the answer is there is no such thing.
There is no perfect event.
You
No.
know, so talk a little bit about what are the ways that when you see it and you heat it off at the pass, that's one thing. How do you keep your cool when, it's behind you or a tray fall, like those just intangible little things that are not perfect. How do you, as the COO, as the event producer, how do you keep your calm and your cool and just kind of allow it to be a thing that happens as opposed to a thing that people remember?
I think part of it is trial by fire. You go through experiences where things go wrong that you just can't control. Um, and I remember I was planning an event, was with the team, and the seating went horribly wrong. I mean, it was horrible. It went horribly, horribly wrong. I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I remember I was almost about to cry. And one of my colleagues at the time pulled me out and she was like, you cannot cry. If you cry, we all lose it. And I had a moment, but at that time, I was like, first of all, you can't think of a solution if you're emotional. And so I have to be at peace because there's always a strategy. Something happens, but if I'm not in a place of peace, I can't figure out what to do. So I learned from that, okay, I can freak out after, I can go home and freak out, but I cannot freak out at that point because people are looking to me for what do we do? And when I sit and be still and it's like, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. There was one time, I've got a couple of stories, but there was one time when there was a guest speaker at an event. It was like a mission moment speaker. And she went up to speak, and there had to be a good 400 people, 500 in the room. And she was like, oh, okay. I'm looking for my script. She said, Mia, do you know where my script is? I had her script. And I was like, I'm coming. And I tootled up there with the script. I said, so sorry, everybody. And I tootled off. There was nothing I could do. And so I just learned to be you. But a lot of times, if you do the planning right, you will, you will, you will alleviate a lot of things. And again, a lot of the things that happen, they happen. And sometimes people don't even know. No one even knew it happened.
That's absolutely true. And you really created a bumper sticker moment there with the quote you said a little bit earlier on in your response there, that you can't think of a solution if you're emotional.
Yeah. It's painful. Like there was another event where Maya Angelou was coming in town. The Maya Angelou. Oh my gosh, it
Wow.
was amazing. It was for our MLK celebration. It was amazing. She was she as she was getting older, she was more she had a version of flying as much. And so she had found out it was going to be turbulent that day. And about this is the day of the event. We get a call at maybe 9 a.m., maybe 9:30 that she will not be making it because of the air turbulence.
Oh
I
no.
was like, you got to be kidding me. And it was like, oh my gosh, there were 1,000 people coming. What are we gonna do? And so I remember calling, Jim Spencer back in the day. I believed anything that Jim Spencer said about the weather. I even got Jim Spencer on the phone to call her people to say it was gonna be fine. I did. I was trying to troubleshoot it, and then she wouldn't come. And at that point, I said, okay. And then we went into crisis mode. And it was just like, okay, I need a new date. And the venue, here's the venue. When the venue is available, I need a new date from you. So we got a new date from her people, the venue. We were good. And then we triaged it. I mean, we called sponsors. We did, by the time there were 1,000 people that were supposed to come, I think that night we only ended up having 20 that came. We were able to troubleshoot it.
A 98% success rate of that is even in, and this was probably before everyone was in their phones all the time,
Correct.
is
Correct.
really, because Maya Angelou passed away several years ago. So I mean, it was really
Correct.
kind of before all
It
that.
was a while ago.
Wow. And for anyone who doesn't know who Jim Spencer is a legendary Austin forecaster. And for
Oh,
decades, whenever there was a weather crisis, everyone
man.
huddled around their TV and watched
Yeah, I
KXAN.
believed anything Jim Spencer says about the weather. I believe it. It's gonna happen. So, but it's during those moments when you're like, okay, I can handle anything. You get those
Absolutely.
stripes as you go through things, and then it's just like, oh, well, if this has happened, okay. A
Yeah.
tray falling with glasses means nothing.
Well, and that's it. So, I want to ask you, so, you handled that really deftly and, 98. I mean, that's just amazing that back then, 980 out of 1,000 people got the memo in 6 hours or thereabouts. So, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to engage with a celebrity or a high profile person? So with you, you had this instance with Maya Angelou, and she was clearly scared to fly, and you were able to kind of make it work. And she also agreed to move the date, so it all wound up working out. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to somebody, working with a celebrity or a high profile person? Because things change all the time with them. It is
Mhm.
not static by any means.
You have to be flexible, pay attention to the contract. Make sure your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. Um, just stay in communication with the right person. Like, be clear. They want details. Bringing people in, high profile people. One of the things that I've noticed over time is that they sometimes they're not treated well. And so when they're coming into a situation, they don't know what to expect. So they're almost on guard, like, okay. And so first of all, just make sure, don't make sure payment's not an issue. Make sure when money is due, all that good stuff. Treat them well. Um, and it doesn't have to be expensive. We're Texas. Show them some Texas hospitality. It's great to see you. Just little things, having a bag, make sure they're picked up well, having something in their room with a nice note, just those little things and you will find some celebrities are high maintenance and some are not. They are people. And some high maintenance people. and you know some that are not. And so don't be mad and you adjust because you're like, okay, I need you to be at your best. What do you need? Do you need water? Do you need this? Most of them are really nice. They're
They
super
are.
nice.
They
Yeah.
actually are. And I'm glad you mentioned the part about it doesn't have to be this off the hook expensive thing either. Like I was at something not too long ago where the guest speaker doesn't live in Texas anymore, but they went to the University of Texas.
Mhm.
And in their room, as they were getting ready to ring the green room, they had queso and chips. And during the program, this person mentioned, I am so glad you all got me queso and chips. It doesn't have to be anything
Mm.
overly luxurious. It could be something of comfort. This was clearly a comfort to this person because it reminded them of their college days.
Yeah, just thoughtful. A handwritten note. Handwritten notes are, people have forgotten how nice. I keep any handwritten note that somebody gives to me. They're just special. Ask them what do they like? What they have a writer and all of that good stuff, but just what they like. And also, we're in Austin, so give them a bit of Austin. Give them a bit of Texas. But they're so nice. One of the things about Maya Angelou that I'll never forget, we had to bring her in the back of the hotel, of course. And as we were walking down the corridor, she said hi to every housekeeper, waitress, staff person. She was like, hello, how are you? Good to see you. Hi. I will never forget it. She made each of them feel like $1 million just from saying hello.
Absolutely. And that's all. At any event, everyone wants to feel like they're the only person in the room, but it can be for 3 seconds. It doesn't have to be
Exactly.
the whole time. And that's the perfect example of that. And I'm really glad we're kind of diving into kind of, nonprofits and events. So what do you think a nonprofit should be looking for when they're seeking an event producer for their gala or any type of signature fundraiser that they're hosting?
Um, Find a producer that gels with you. I have to say, the thing that makes me a little different is I think like an event planner. I love all the linens, um, all the details, the lighting, all of that. But when I worked at St. Edward's University, that taught me about development. And so I think like a fundraiser and an event planner. And so I married the two, but also someone that gets a gala is a gala, a dinner is a dinner. My job is how do I make this feel like your organization? That to me is key. And so you want an event producer that can do that for you, that can handle it. And sometimes they've got a crew and they just want someone to handle all the details and they don't need anybody to think about the fundraising piece. So I think know what you need, know how this person is going to interface and make sure that you're comfortable with that and make sure that they have the experience that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I love the comment that you made about making the event feel like that organization
Yes.
because the organization is almost like a person in a way.
Yes, I'm very much about that is a big piece to me. I feel like I haven't succeeded if I don't. So most of the time I want to be on site with the organization. So I usually do office hours with their team and I necessarily don't want to even meet with them. I want to feel what it's like. I'll pick up cues just from being around them and hearing them talk and seeing how they interact. There's things that I picked up. I was like, why haven't you all done that? Have you all considered this? Have you considered this? And then I'm very competitive. And so that's the thing with annual events. How do you make the same event different year after year?
So I'm glad you brought up, how do you make it different year after year? So talk a little bit about because I know that there's, there's plenty of events where, event producers, it's one and done. And then there's some, and I know several that you've done for many, many years. So what do you look for when a nonprofit's coming to you saying, produce my gala that makes you say, yes, I will produce it?
Um, so I'll ask a lot of questions. Have you done this before? And if they haven't done it before, I'm almost trying to talk them out of an event. because it is a large undertaking. And I think sometimes a nonprofit is like, oh, we're going to do an event and raise thousands and thousands of dollars. It's a lot more involved. So I will ask a lot of questions that make them feel nervous in terms of, oh, maybe we're not ready to do this. And that's okay. But so I ask, like, have you done it before? What's your goal? How much do you want to raise? How much do you want to raise? Is really important, and uh not gross, net. I'm all about net. Budget drives everything. I'm all about net. After expenses, what do you want to go to the organization? Because you can do a $500,000 gross event, but the organization takes home $250,000. To me, that's not good. 30 cents to the dollar. That's what I want. That's what I want for expenses. So I think about that. Is there a committee? Is there a committee? Are there event chairs? And I need honest, is the committee a working committee or a on paper committee? Because there is a difference. And it's okay, but let's not lie about it.
Absolutely true. And I always like to say the best committees have a mix of both because
Hmm.
you want some names. Some names are good, especially if they just want to show up and they're going to, their name means 50 people are going to go. And then
Yes,
there's the ones who are going to do the work. We call it on this program social, financial, and human capital. And it's really
that's
kind of a blend of all
hmm
three of those things.
hmm
So it's good that you're mentioning, the working committee piece because it's definitely a working committee is going to make it flow much better and frankly raise more money.
and raise more money. And then what's their mission? And so, what's their mission? And then my job is to take all that and, how does it feel? How do y'all feel about me? Do you like me? Um, do I feel comfortable? And I'll ask them, just a lot of questions. Um, and then, I think about all of that. I look at the calendar. What else is going on? Are you competing with other things? Because people don't think about that. April and October are the huge months. Are you competing with other things? Are your donors also going to these other things as well? So taking all that into consideration, and then what is your budget? What do you want to spend? Some events are big on decor. It's very important to their crowd. Some are not. So really knowing what is the budget to spend.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I went to the Texas Advocacy Project that you produced
Hmm.
a while back, and I was just enthralled with how the decor was extremely elegant, but at the same time it was very simple, but you still noticed it, and that's a really fine balance to do.
Hmm.
And that's $1 million event. So I know you really do the range of events that are raising $100,000, which is a good substantial amount. And then there's the $1 million plus ones like the Texas Advocacy Project. So,
Hmm.
how does your approach change when it's a smaller scale event that may be raising 100,000 versus one that's $1 million event? Do you approach those differently?
The basic parts I don't because they're still decor, it's still program, it's still the basics are the same. The level of it though changes. So there are some like Texas Advocacy Project that the floral is the decor is important to them. It was key, like it was important. Another group that I work with, that's not important to them, but there could be something else that's important. And so that's why I have to be mindful and ask the questions because every client is different. And that's my job to help figure that out.
So I'm glad you brought that, glad you brought that up. And it's actually kind of a good segue into kind of more, and you talked about it earlier, like when you do the office hours and you're kind of hearing the dynamics. So talk a little bit about event chairs because you brought that up too, and talk about how a strong event chair and a strong organization helps the event producer, which is the third leg on that three-legged stool.
Mhm.
How does that help you ensure that the gala is going to be successful when those two are aligned?
That's a really good question. Event chairs lend their name, their time, their network. That is something that they own. It's almost like their wedding day. I don't want to say their wedding day. That's harsh, but it's their signature on the event. So, and I have to know that. And so you will have some event chairs that are very, I want this feel, I want this, I want this. Now, my job is also to let them allow them to personalize it and put their stamp on it, but never touching the integrity of the organization. Sometimes that's been a dance because sometimes event chairs have gone mm, a little left, and I have to bring them back a little bit to say, that's not going to work. I remember there was one time somebody wanted to do an event for organization, a kids organization that dealt with troubled kids. And they said, yeah, and we're going to call the event, it was a bar hop event. And they're like, we're going to call it Drink for the Kids. I was like, oh, you know what? That is such a good idea. But, because of who we think not calling that is the best thing. So sometimes people just don't think. They're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Um, and so I have to make the event, the organization happy and make sure that it's mission aligned messaging, but knowing that the event chair wants to put their stamp on it. And then there's a way to do it. And I'm that happy medium sometimes. And sometimes they butt heads and I have to sometimes referee a little more. But for the most part, they are excited and willing and want to do it. And then my job is hopefully also to make that easier for them. What do you need? How can I support you? Because when you get good event chairs, they bring their friends and their community and their resources. So a good organization also understands that. And then good event chairs will also understand that, okay, we need to be mindful of their mission. And then give them clear parameters. I've been in some instances where the organization didn't give the event chairs clear parameters. So make sure that that's shared because what they don't know, they don't know. So they're guessing. So don't make them guess.
Absolutely. And alignment is such a critical piece on that three-legged stool because you want a level stool when you sit down, not one with wobbly legs.
Yeah. And then I will also, because I've done a lot of events, I will also share best practices. So I'm the one that can also be the heavy when other people can't. Because in the organization, those people still have to work there after the event. And so they're like, Mia, I can't say that. But I was like, I can. And there's a respectful way to say it. But so I've had some nice conversations to say, tell me why you're doing this. Best practices are this. And not that I can't be convinced, but why are you doing it? So sometimes I also bring a fresh perspective. And then I can also veto some things that they've done. And sometimes they do things just because, well, we've always done it. Well, how about we try something different?
Absolutely. That is I know an event's static when that's what they say, and it's like, okay, you kind of need, you know, adjustments so that you can take it to a new level or the next level or, or whatever that or whatever that is. And
Yeah.
I went through my head like when you were saying some of those examples. It's funny how the vivid imagery can come with certain things because we've
You
all
can think
been
of
there.
people.
Been there, seen it, done it. So,
Yes.
in addition to galas, you also produce a range of events outside of that, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So, in addition to galas, there's weddings, there's birthday parties, and then, of course, corporate events. And a lot of our audience, it might be that. So, talk about how each of those types of things are different and how you may approach a corporate event different from a gala
Mhm.
that you might from a wedding.
Yeah, for corporate, um, there are clear, which I also want from the nonprofit, but their goals and objectives sometimes are very different than that of a nonprofit. And so sometimes they often have a bigger budget. which is nice. Um, but their goals and objectives are really particular. And so that's really important for me to know, so that I can make sure, okay, what's the goal? What's the objective? Because the event needs to meet those. So, also, who's the decision maker? Um, who do we need to make happy? Like I literally like who are the people that need to be happy for this? Because sometimes it's like it's the CEO or it's this person or it's this person or it's a couple of people, who are the decision makers. Um, and they tend to also make decisions and want things quickly. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. Now, they will pay you for that, but you have to kind of be, and it can pivot like this sometimes, and you have to be ready. You've got to be on your P's and Q's. You have to be on your P's and Q's. But it's amazing and fun, and I get to do some things with corporate events that I don't get to do sometimes with nonprofit.
Yeah, and that, again, they're very different goals and objectives because sometimes with a corporate event, it could just be a celebration or it
Hmm.
could be a president's club. It can just be so many different things where the goals and the objectives are. It's not necessarily about raising money. And then sometimes with corporate events, if clients are coming in, it kind of is, but it's not necessarily that night. So I'm glad you kind of brought the difference up. It was just funny when you were talking about making people happy. I immediately thought of weddings because the funny thing is that I know that there's the terms groomzilla and bridezilla, but a lot of the times I hear the zillas are actually the parents and not the group and not even the people that are getting married a lot of the time.
So weddings are not my favorite thing to do. There are people on my team that like to do that, and I will support them. I've done 4 weddings. The 4 I did, they had to beg me because they were people that I knew, and they were like, Mia, please, you kind of did this for me, so why don't you do this? One was kind of a planner herself, so she had everything planned and just needed a day of. But it really, there's lots of personalities with weddings. Um, and it is sometimes it's the mom of the bride, the dad of the family. It could be the bride itself. There's just so many emotional unknowns sometimes. But once I'm in the thick of it, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful occasion, but sometimes getting to that point can be hard. And you just have to know. I think you just have to be anointed for weddings. And God bless those that are. And I will do that on occasion, but
Well, it was funny that you said that because like when you were saying it, it kind of made me think about something we had talked about earlier in that in a gala, like when you were talking about Maya Angelou meeting like all the staff and introducing herself to them. At a gala, people want to feel like they're the only person in the room. But at a wedding, that's not, you're lucky if you get the 30 seconds with the couple that's getting married. It's a very different dynamic. And I think that's why there's so many personalities that come into play with that.
yeah, whenever I meet with brides and grooms, and I do this with the family with them, I said, this is their day. I was like, they're the ones that are going to be married. I said, this is about the two of you. I get all the family, but this is your day. And so one of the things I tell them is I need you to both individually tell me what 5 things are important to you individually, not together. What 5 things are important to you? What 5 things are important to you? See where they mesh. Because when calamity comes and arguments come and budget comes, I'm going to go back to that list and say at the beginning, you said these were the important things to you. And I do that with the family as well. And a lot of times it squashes things.
Well, it does. And I love that because it's basically you're giving them a North Star
Absolutely.
and a compass. That is absolutely, that's brilliant. And, while we're talking about budgets, because you had mentioned that, do you have a go-to item on a budget that is just you can count on it every time. It's going to be and it's going to elevate the event and you're going to hear people complimenting it, when you've got, your Scooby-Doo ears on and are hearing what everybody's saying around you.
I say 3 things. Never scooch, never compromise on your food, never compromise on your drink, and never compromise on your AV.
Those are three extremely important things.
If the food is horrible, you're going to hear about it. If the drinks are, and if they can't hear it, they can't see it, they are going to remember. Those three, I was like, everything else is great and wonderful, but those to me are the staples.
And those are the three things that what I'm hearing you say is what will make them come back the next time, especially if it's a gala. They'll come back the next year if they know cocktails are on
Yes,
the ready and the food is good.
I know it's not sexy. I know it's not. But if you think about events where you went to where food was bad, drinks were bad, or you could not hear, it affects the ability of the entire event. The other thing I would probably say is registration. How that registration process happens to me is key. Because if it's sour, they have a sour taste right at the beginning before they've even entered the event. So decor is nice. All that other stuff is really nice. All those experiences great. But if you really think about events that were horrible, it was either the food, the drink, or the AV, or
Yeah.
registration was totally botched.
Yeah, and the registration and it takes forever to get in and that kind of you come wanting to have a good time and that you can see and I've seen it. I've been in long lines before where it's like you can just see the happiness draining out of
Yeah.
people while they wait in line.
Yeah, yeah. And people are impatient now. Like, our society now, everything's quick. So we just, before people were patient, but now in our society, they're not. And so if they can't do it quickly, they're just like, so you've got to have lots of bells and whistles, have drinks when they register. If they have a drink, there's something showing something. So, you come to think of things. You have multiple people checking in. Little things like that you don't think about. I try to go through the event as a guest. I literally am like, what am I hearing? What am I seeing? I walk through it as a guest. And that helps me to say, oh, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this?
I love that. That actually is a good segue into the next question I had for you. And it's actually kind of almost on the opposite side of the coin of,
Mhm.
those hallmarks that they have to be good for people to come back. But what do the best nonprofit event moments have in common?
Mm, mm. You know, um, I think every nonprofit, again, has their own feel. Texas Advocacy Project is different than Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is different than SAFE. They all have their own feel and their own signature. I think messaging is key. Messaging about their organization. I think how that's woven into the night is key. Um, the event should be fun. People forget about this. Really should be fun. I will say this, and I say this for nonprofit. If you have a live auction, not even a live, but if you have a paddles up moment or a fundraising moment, please don't discount using a professional auctioneer. I have just seen, and I know everybody can't afford it, but there is a science to what they do that makes a huge difference. And I know some nonprofits necessarily can't, but every time it's done without one, I was like, God, they could have just raised more money if they had an auctioneer.
Yeah, and it's an
Um,
investment. And it's
it
an
is.
investment. If you want your event to be there in 5 years,
Yes.
that's kind of where you get an auctioneer and you build that that long-term partnership with them to do that. I completely agree with that
Yes.
because there's just a way that a good auctioneer, and we all know who all the good auctioneers are,
Hmm.
can read a room, and it's the way that they're able to do that. They can tap into something, but the rest of us just can't see, and it's really cool when that happens.
It is. And how they tell their story, there's always a moment when they're telling their story. How are they doing that? Sometimes it's a video, a testimonial, but how are you telling your story? It's critical. Tell your How you're telling your story about the people that you serve or the kids that you serve. That to me, that's key.
That is absolutely key. And I know we're coming up on time here, but I always end a segment with this question. What is one thing all successful events have in common?
Mm. One thing. You know what? They're well planned. Just a good plan. Um, a good plan. There's nothing worse than an unorganized event. Um, I have to say that overall, because they all tie together, but if it's not well planned, it just leaves rooms for so many different errors. So I think planning is key.
Absolutely. My husband always likes to say that there's nothing bad that happens in production. It's only when it goes wrong in pre-production that creates those problems. And
Yeah.
that is the perfect answer and the perfect way to end
Yeah.
our chat. So tell us where we can find you.
Oh, okay. So you can find me Mia Event Diva, Facebook, Instagram, both Mia Event Diva, website, miaeventdiva.com. Yeah, LinkedIn, Mia Sims or Mia Event Diva.
Well, Mia Vendiva, I can see why you are so successful at what you do. You're always one of my favorite people I run into when I at an event in Austin, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time today.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
And again, like Mia said, for more information about Mia, visit miaeventdiva.com, or you can find her on Instagram at miaeventdiva. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.